Hello there. Welcome back to the channel. So I almost missed tonight's recording. It's so late. It's like 25 to 12. And I was putting my baby to sleep and I fell asleep and I didn't get back up. So I'm up now and I'm going to quickly do a recording. Let's get right into the video. This is Scare Theater again. Do Not Trust Oceangate. I'm guessing it's about the submarine. We all know about the submarine story. Very tragic. I want to see what he gets into. I'm actually super excited to watch this, even though I've seen everything about the submarine. I just want to see what he has to say. And one of the craziest things to me is still that people actually say that because these people are rich, they deserve to die. It's like, I don't care who or what or how or whatever. Like, you can be the richest person in the world, you never deserve to die. No one deserves to die. Yeah, life is all that matters. So yeah, let's jump right into it and let's hear what he has to say about the submarine and what happened, you know, and all that type of stuff. Cool. Let's get right into it.
Unless you're living under a rock, I'm sure you are all familiar with the recent Oceangate tragedy, an incident that resulted in the loss of 5 lives when they tried to use an experimental submersible to see the Titanic wreckage. Among this tale of horror and grief...
Was it experimental? Like, I know it was sort of, but I mean, the amount of times that it's gone down already. Yeah, I don't know.
The most tragic part is how easily this could have been prevented. After
Yeah,
reading through
that's
all the
very
media
true.
coverage on this, there's one main takeaway I got. Do not trust Oceangate.
Okay. Tell me why.
Oceangate is a company that was founded in 2009 that builds and provides submersibles for research and exploration. They also provide tourism to people who want to take a ride in one of these submersibles. One of the subs they've built is called Titan, which had an insane amount of safety issues that we'll get to later.
With Cyclops, what was Cyclops 2, Titan, the latest submersible that Oceangate has developed.
Titan was advertised as being lighter, more spacious, and more comfortable than any other deep diving submersible exploring the ocean today. In 2021, they started taking tourists on trips to see the Titanic in this sub for the price of $250,000 per person. The last 5 people to ever enter this sub were Stockton Rush, the CEO of Oceangate, Hamish Harding, a British businessman, Paul Henry Nargeolet, a French explorer, Shahzada Dawood, a British Pakistani businessman, and Suleiman Dawood, Shahzada's 19-year-old son.
That's so sad, that part.
On June 18th, these 5 people boarded, not knowing they were walking right to their own graves. Suleiman must have had some sense of the danger he was about to be in, as he was reportedly terrified to enter the sub, but he did it anyway to please his father. They were sealed into this claustrophobia-inducing sub controlled with a wireless Logitech game controller. At the end of the sub was a 380mm viewport, which is also where they put the toilet, which would be hidden behind a black curtain.
So we're coming into the sub. This is the only toilet available on a deep diving submersible. Best seat in the house. You can look out the viewport. We put a privacy screen in, turn up the music, and it's very popular.
At 8:00 a.m., they began their 4-kilometer descent to the Titanic wreck. 1 hour and 45 minutes later, they lost communication with the surface vessel. This wasn't an immediate red flag because, as we'll discuss later, the sub was known to frequently lose communication during their previous dives. It wasn't until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when they were scheduled to resurface, that the surface crew started getting worried. More time passed, and they knew something was wrong. At 5:40 p.m., the Coast Guard received a report about the missing sub. The next day, a full search for the missing crew was put into place. They deployed US and Canadian ships and planes to scour the area. They dropped sono buoys that could monitor to a depth of 4 kilometers, and they even asked commercial vessels for help in their search. It wasn't long before they started receiving heaps of news coverage.
So I also heard that there's random, there's so many, like, you know, what do you call it, like, theories and stuff behind all this. Apparently, I heard, I think from my wife, that it could have been, well, not could have been, apparently Joe Biden and them, like, they found this ship, like, all those things, like, straight away, but they kept it going for the next couple of days because apparently they were doing something dodgy, or I can't really remember the entire story, but apparently they were trying to, like, create, like, this hype so that it distracts everybody from what they were busy doing at that time. I'm not sure who or what it was. I can't remember, but yeah, that's something that I heard. But yeah, there's a lot of theories behind this. Also, an interesting, I know this, he's going all negative about Oceangate, and, like, you know, where I also watched, like, the whole unveiling of this thing and how everything worked, and everything pointed to being super dodge, like this video is about. But an interesting watch, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna, maybe I'll react to it straight after this. But you must go and watch the video of one of the other pilots that's also done this and is actually friends with the people that was piloting this one. Go and hear his take on it, and then you'll see what I mean. Like, it almost changes your perspective. Maybe I'll play it straight off this.
To begin with, an urgent search and rescue operation that is currently underway in the Atlantic Ocean.
Right now, racing the clock to try to find this missing submersible.
There are search and rescue crews now combing the icy waters.
I'm very hopeful and very positive.
At this point, no one was sure exactly what happened to them, but the assumption was that they were still alive and somehow got stuck somewhere near the wreckage. They reportedly only had between 70 and 96 hours of oxygen left. This painted a dark picture in the minds of outside spectators of this event. A nightmare scenario of 5 people trapped in a tight area in the depths of the ocean, slowly going mad with no way to communicate with the outside world or have any indication of how the rescue effort is going. Were they screaming? Crying? No one knew. As their precious oxygen supply decreased hour by hour, the worry of the families and search crew increased. The next day came around, leading the public to believe they are now at roughly 46 to 72 hours of life left. At this point, an interesting development was made in the search. The Canadian Lockheed P-3 Orion aircraft detected underwater noises in the search. Hoping this might be sounds coming from the sub, they deployed remote vehicles to search the area while the sounds were shared with US Navy experts for analysis. Although the Coast Guard never made any announcements about any specific details of these sounds, the Rolling Stone magazine reported that the sounds were described as banging sounds in the area every 30 minutes. They claim they got this information from an internal email update sent by the Department of Homeland Security. This gave people the hope that maybe the crew is still alive and possibly on the verge of being rescued. The next day, at 2 o'clock in the morning, the US Coast Guard announced that the remote vehicle sent to search the area found nothing. We were still no closer to finding the crew, and to make matters worse, if they were still alive at this point, they'd have only about a day's worth of oxygen left.
This morning,
I watched this
an
entire
ROV, or remote-operated vehicle, from
this entire press conference thing.
the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tail cone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor.
Thursday, June 22nd, was the last day of the search. A debris field was found near the Titanic wreck containing pieces of the Titan sub. According to the Coast Guard, the debris was consistent with loss of the pressure chamber and an implosion.
The debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber.
The bad news is they were gone. The good news is their passing was likely instantaneous and happened not long after they began their descent. They were probably gone before they even knew anything bad was happening.
I'd like to be remembered as an innovator. I think it was General MacArthur said, "You're remembered for the rules you break." And, I've broken some rules to make this.
Like I said at the beginning of the video, the most tragic part about this is how easily this could have been prevented. The untimely passing of these 5 individuals was a result of the careless negligence of the OceanGate CEO, Stockton Rush. The Titan submersible was highly experimental and not at all safe. And Rush knew this. In fact, he actively ignored every warning he was given about this in the name of innovation. One of the many people that warned Rush about the safety hazards was a former OceanGate employee named David Lockridge. In 2018, Lockridge wrote an engineering report that said the sub needed more testing and that passengers might be endangered when it reaches extreme depths. As a result of voicing his concerns, Stockton Rush completely gaslit the guy by firing him and then suing him and his wife. They accused Lockridge of sharing confidential information, misappropriating trade secrets, and using the company for immigration assistance, then manufacturing a reason to be fired. In response, Lockridge filed a counterclaim, alleging that he was wrongfully fired. The lawsuit documents detail how Lockridge was concerned about OceanGate deciding to rely on acoustic monitoring systems that would detect popping or cracking made by the Titan's hull under pressure to find flaws. The lawsuit cites Lockridge as saying, "This was problematic because this type of acoustic analysis would only show when a component is about to fail, often milliseconds before an implosion, and would not detect any existing flaws prior to putting pressure onto the hull. Instead, he suggested it would be safer to do a full scan of the hull to detect flaws. He was told by OceanGate that they couldn't do this because no equipment existed that could perform this type of test due to the thickness of the hull. This is only the beginning of the problems though. Lockridge also stated that the passenger viewport had only been certified for depths of up to about 1.3 kilometers, not the 4 kilometers required to get to the Titanic wreck. OceanGate refused to pay for a manufacturer to build a viewport certified for 4 kilometers. Even with all that considered, I think the most concerning part of this lawsuit document is item 20, which states, "The passengers would not be aware and would not be informed of this experimental design, the lack of non-destructive testing of the hull, or that hazardous flammable materials were being used within the submersible." What the actual fuck? Another former employee of OceanGate.
Okay, but was that back in 2018? Like in the heading behind that? Have they changed it since? You know what I'm saying? That's a very old document. I mean, they could have made so many changes. So, like, was it the exact same one? Wouldn't they have made changes up until now if they've gotten people to go down there before, which they have? You understand what I'm saying? I'm not sure. Anyways, let's just keep going.
Spoke to CNN.
Sorry, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. I totally agree that okay, wait. I actually think we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. Let's first go and play this interview. I'm telling you now, it changed my perspective, yes, on the whole situation, just because of this guy's emotions and what he says about OceanGate is like, it's so true. Let's watch this. Yeah, I've got it open.
Well, I'm rejoined, in fact, by a guest I had last night, Fred Hagen, who was on board the last 2 Titan missions and knows 2 of the people on board, Stockton Rush and Paul Henry Nargeolet. Well, Fred, I'm really sad to speak to you again now that we know the news, which I think we both probably feared yesterday but didn't want to say, that very sadly everyone on board has lost their lives. What is your reaction to what we just heard?
Well, Piers, as you can imagine, sitting here listening to this press conference while waiting to talk to you has made this much more difficult than I anticipated. And I can only say that the world has lost 2 radiant points of light with Stockton and PH. And as we talked yesterday, these men were great men who tried greatly and risked everything. And I want their epitaph to be what Teddy Roosevelt said, that the credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena. whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, and who strives valiantly who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, excuse me, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. And that, to me, is the true epitaph of Stockton Rush and P.H. Nargelet and their companions. And I'm very sorry. It was just devastating sitting here listening to the realization of what we all feared and then trying to express my feelings moments later. I apologize.
Fred, there's no apology obviously needed at all. I know from our conversation yesterday how personally moved you've been by this. The rest of the world has watched on in sort of mounting horror as this story has unraveled. For you, it was incredibly personal. You've been on this vessel. You've been on the last two Titanic missions in 2021 and 22 with Stockton Rush, with your friend PH. He'd been down to that wreckage 30 odd times, I think, and brought back so many extraordinary things.
You hear that? The pilots were down 30 odd times and brought back stuff from the Titanic, and they'd been there before. Just something to think about.
The world to see. He was a genuine historian in that sense. We're looking at a picture of you all now. It's a desperately sad time for you and for everyone who knew them, their friends, their families, everyone. And it's a sad time, I think, for the world to look on and see people who ultimately, as I said yesterday, I got very angry about the reaction from certain people about the fact that they were wealthy people paying to go down there and so on. To me, they were intrepid explorers. It doesn't matter how much money you have. They're intrepid explorers. And some are paid to be there and some were being paid to be there. It makes no difference. The goal was to go down and find new information which could shed light on one of the great tragedies of the history of this planet, which was the sinking of the Titanic. And I commend them for the courage that it took to do that. And I think that their death is an absolute tragedy. But they should be remembered as heroes who went down there. I wouldn't go down there. I mean, I admire you for doing it. You know, it's an extraordinary thing to want to do.
And Piers, I'd like to say that...
Listen to what he says here in this response. This is nuts. And what made me think about it differently as well.
Right now, at this point in time, the death toll from the Titanic tragedy has risen from 1,517 to 1,522, and may God rest their souls.
Yeah, I mean, it is an eerie thing, isn't it, when you think about the Titanic and the huge death loss, as you say, and the fact that we're going down there to see their... and have now lost their lives. There was a very poignant interview, actually, with the older sister of Shahzada Dawood, who said she felt absolutely heartbroken that both her brother and, of course, her nephew, who's only 19, is a student at Strathclyde University. And this is Asma Dawood, who was the aunt of that young boy and the sister of his father on board as well. I feel like I've been caught in a really bad film, she said, with a countdown, but you didn't know what you're counting down to. I've personally found it incredibly difficult to breathe thinking of them. She then said that her nephew didn't want to go on the submersible, but agreed to take part because it was important to his father, a lifelong Titanic obsessive. The Suleiman, she said, wasn't very up for it and was terrified, explaining the 19-year-old had expressed his concerns to the family member. But that is, of course, part of, I guess, the adventure. And yes, it's ended in appalling circumstances. It's cost that young man his life, but his father obviously was enthralled by the history of this and wanted to be part of that history and to go down there and to explore. And again, I think it's a heroic and noble thing to do that kind of thing. Most people don't get the chance to do it and don't have the inclination to do it.
Most people live lives of quiet desperation, and these men lived large. They realized their dreams, they pursued them, and they should be celebrated.
It's been revealed by the Coast Guard. It doesn't appear to be any connection between the underwater banging noises that were identified yesterday coming every 30 minutes, and the location of where this debris was found. So they seem to be saying there doesn't appear to be any connection there. Does that suggest to you, Fred, that this catastrophic implosion may have happened quite quickly after they went down? What would be your reading of this?
Well, clearly it happened very quickly. I was originally critical of the fact that those in command did not allow the Brits to immediately mobilize the Magellan. And obviously that was because they'd heard a seismic event and they interpreted it as a catastrophic failure. And then those noises were heard and there was a change of heart. The French came last night. They showed up on site for their beloved PH. And, I believe that the Magellan was finally mobilized. And that was as a result of hearing those knocking noises. But yes, at this point, clearly there was a catastrophic failure on the descent. And while we're all devastated by the loss of these wonderful human beings, at the same time, there's another little part of me that is relieved that they have not spent the last several days dying slowly in the most horrific, nightmarish condition.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. From what I've read, when this kind of implosion occurs, it literally takes milliseconds and nobody on board would even be aware of it. It is catastrophic and instant.
That is correct. And at least they were spared any suffering. And that is some solace to PH's daughter and to the families, to Stockton's widow, Wendy, and to all the others. I didn't know the other passengers, but it is a small solace.
You talk about PH, this extraordinary man. He served in the French Navy for 25 years.
Sorry, I'm very quiet. I made a mistake earlier. It's later on when he gives like this massive speech. You'll see what I'm talking about.
It's known as Titanic's greatest.
But isn't this like a completely different view from what that guy's video is going to be about? Interesting to watch, like, the two differences. And I know it's Piers Morgan and people don't like him or whatever, but he does have some good views, and maybe this is one that we should rather take on this whole situation and understand the company was dodgy, but just wait until he speaks about the company.
Explorer. According to his biography, he was widely considered the leading authority on the Titanic shipwreck. What was he like as a man, Fred?
Well, you would never have known that he was the preeminent deep diving expert on Earth. He was a consummate professional, but you would sit down with him and he would be just as warm and relaxed as your oldest friend. And as someone else said, whether he was just as comfortable on the deck of a ship in a tornado as he was sitting in a Parisian cafe. That was very true. And that was PH. He was very down to earth. He was both incredibly accomplished and incredibly humble.
You've been on this. You've been on the same missions. Did you have moments, Fred, where you felt unnerved, scared even? How intimidating is the experience of doing this kind of journey?
It can be very intimidating. PH would always be calm, and there are some people that are just calm under stress, and I like to think I'm one of them. There were a few moments when we got kind of the currents pulled us into the ship, and we were momentarily entangled, and I know that others on the sub were maybe more unnerved than and they wanted to immediately ascend. For my part, I wanted to see the stern, and one of the experiences I had last year is we went all around the bow and explored it, and I wanted to go to the stern on the same day. I wanted to be the first person to see both pieces on the same day. And we tried. And when we got back, Wendy and Stockton were both incredulous and saying, well, what on earth were you doing? Why were you trying to get to the stern? And of course, I was blamed for our perseverance. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or addressed it, but yes, there were moments, but they did not in any way diminish my appetite to experience the Titanic and experience this wonderful adventure with PH and Argelay. And I'll always treasure that event, and I'll always treasure his friendship.
We have a statement just in from the British Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly. Tragic news that those on the Titan submersible, including 3 British citizens, have been lost following an international search operation. The UK government is closely supporting the families affected and expresses our deepest condolences. Stockton Rush, inevitably, I guess, as the CEO and founder of OceanGate, he's come under, in the last few days, a lot of criticism along with the company.
Of course he has.
For maybe cutting
Well
corners
deserved.
and not doing enough.
But listen to what his response is here.
Make the Titan properly secure for this kind of mission. You know, I don't think we should labour that point now that he's so sadly lost his life. But what is your response, Fred, to that particular criticism that it wasn't really ready to do this kind of thing?
Listen here.
The only criminal act was the failure of governments to properly fund science and deep water exploration. What Stockton did was to pursue cutting edge technology to take human beings into a realm where they've never gone before. You know, you've had previously you had government funded submersibles, maybe that whole 1 or 2 people that have gone that deep. You've never had anyone try to democratize the depths, trying to take humanity where it never belonged, it was never able to access. And I look at it kind of like the original flyers, as I mentioned previously. The Wright brothers took off and left the surly bonds of Earth. Do you know how many people died trying to make aviation safe and where anybody could participate safely? They died by the hundreds, by the scores, and they gave their lives trying to, stretch the envelope, to exceed expectations, to go further and farther and faster. And Stockton was doing that. He was doing it in the depths of the ocean, which is the great frontier on Earth, the last unexplored region of Earth, which is so critical to our own future and critical to the preservation of life on Earth.
And Hamish Hardy.
And I'll just add. I'm sorry, Piers. I'll just add that a lot of the criticism that's mounting up. I hear things. I can't tell how many times I've heard about the joystick. It's a video game joystick, and it's like that's funny, and people laugh and they make fun of it. Well, that's the difference between a government-funded project and a brilliant entrepreneur who is trying to push boundaries. The government would have spent tens of millions of dollars designing a joystick that would have worked perfectly and brilliantly. Stockton Rush was able to find a joystick that worked just as efficiently by using a video game controller. And one thing I know beyond any doubt is whatever happened to that submersible, it had nothing to do with the video game controller.
Fred, I'm so sorry that this has ended the way it has for your 2 great friends. It's a very sad day, I think, for everyone who's ever been down on that expedition to the Titanic, and to lose people who've so experienced, so attached.
Okay, so I want to get into what he said there a little bit. But let's just hear what he has to say. Obviously, it's just respectful.
Attached to that must be a huge loss to you, both professionally, I guess, and also obviously personally. And I really appreciate you joining me so soon after that news was broken.
Thank you, Piers. And I'll say again, thank you so much for your attitude and for your gracious handling of this tragedy. I deeply, deeply appreciate it. And I know the family does too.
Well, thank you, Fred. And I mean it. I'm sincere about that. I think these people are heroic when they do this kind of thing. And to attack them because of how much money they may have is completely missing the point to me.
Yeah, that is insane. That people are saying they deserve it just because of money. It's nuts.
Fred Hagen, thank you very much.
So messed up.
Thank you.
Well, just to recap for viewers who are tuning in, the very sad breaking news that the Titan...
Okay, so that was his thoughts, which makes so much sense. Just think about the people that were trying to fly in an airplane or fly in general. How they must have been like, everyone would have been like, are they mad? Are they stupid? Are they idiots? You know, I doubt they said you deserve to die because that's just flippin' bad. But, you know what I'm saying? It's a thing. People try and push boundaries to explore places or things that was never explored before. Just imagine they never did that back in the day. We wouldn't have airplanes. We wouldn't have transport. We wouldn't have this world that could, like, I know there's so much bad going on, but what about all the good? Like, people can actually, like, visit each other, become friends in all around the world. People can travel. People can, all of this wouldn't be possible without those people sacrificing to, change. And what these guys are doing, yes, might seem like, okay, it wasn't done in the best way, but it's something that they, like, a passion of theirs that they are pursuing, if you know what I'm saying. That's just the fact that he mentioned that part, like, it changed the way I think about it. And maybe it does for you too. I don't know. But let's get back into the other video. And understand, yes, there is definitely things to be negative about, but what he said did change my mindset about this company a little bit, I'm not gonna lie.
Then anonymously during the search for the sub and voiced similar concern to that of David Lockridge. He mentioned that the hole was 5 inches thick, even though it was supposed to be 7. Apparently, more safety concerns continued to be raised by other contractors and employees. Some even spoke directly to Stockton Rush himself and told him that OceanGate might be violating a US law relating to Coast Guard inspections. But Rush wasn't having it. He let his pride and innovation get in the way and completely dismissed all these warnings. Even OceanGate themselves says some stuff that just doesn't seem right. In a 2021 court filing, OceanGate's legal representative talked about how the sub's hull monitoring system was an unparalleled safety feature. They go on to claim that the Titan Submersible was a result of 8 years of hard work, including detailed engineering and development work under a company issued
8 years, eh? We're in 2023, so that's 3 plus the 2 years, so that's 5 years ago that claims was made on that document. That means after only 3 years, they've had another 5 years on since that. You see? You're telling me in 5 years things couldn't have changed? Or even from 2018 to 2021, another 3 years of development? You understand what I'm saying? What is the state of... Were people complaining about it recently?
$5 million contract to the University of Washington's Applied Physics Laboratory. But the University of Washington begs to differ. They said that their laboratory has never dealt with design or engineering for the Titan vessel. Their expertise only involved shallow water implementation. Stockton Rush himself is even on record saying things that are just blatant red flags. The Alan XL Mundo YouTube channel has a video from 2021 that shows Rush talking about the work they do at OceanGate. He talks about how he wants to be remembered as an innovator, and literally says, "I've broken some rules to make this."
And, I've broken some rules to make this. I think I've broken them with logic and good engineering behind me. The carbon fiber and titanium, there's a rule you don't do that. Well, I did.
A former consultant for OceanGate, Rob McCallum, also warned Rush about safety concerns through emails. He writes, "We're wanting to use a
again, it's back in 2018. Has things changed since then? You can't use old shit. I'm just saying.
Type unclassed technology in a very hostile place. As much as I appreciate entrepreneurship and innovation, you are potentially putting an entire industry at risk." Rush responds to this email with, "I have grown tired of industry players who try to use a safety argument to stop innovation and new entrants from entering their small market. Since Guillermo and I started OceanGate, we've heard the baseless cries of, 'You're going to kill someone,' way too often. I take this as a serious personal insult." McCallum replies, "I think you are potentially placing yourself and your clients in a dangerous dynamic. Ironically, in your race to Titanic, you are mirroring the famous catch cry, 'She's unsinkable.' Having dived the Titanic and having stood in a coroner's court as a technical expert, it would be remiss of me not to bring this to your attention." You may have taken note of how in the first email, McCallum refers to the sub as unclassed. Having a sub classified is a process of getting a certification by an independent ship classification organization. This classification certifies that the vessel complies with relevant standards. As McCallum said, Titan is not classified. This is something that brought concern to a lot of people, including the Marine Technology Society, In a 2018 letter they wrote to OceanGate,
Still,
they took issue with how the
all
Titans...
this information's from back in 2018, okay? Since then, since 2018, they've gone down to the Titanic quite a few times in this thing. And nothing happened. So if you can do so many, you know, trips, or attempted trips even, into it, and I know I also saw the videos of them having, like, the some of the crew saying, every time I went down there, I was terrified, or I won't tell you how many times we had to abort. Okay? So you aborted and nothing happened. So, yeah, you understand what I'm saying? It all comes back down to they did it. So, yeah, I don't know, man.
Advertised as meeting the DNV-GL safety standards. They wrote that it does not appear that OceanGate has any intention of actually following DNV-GL class rules. They also wrote, our apprehension is that the current experimental approach adopted by OceanGate could result in negative outcomes, from minor to catastrophic, that would have serious consequences for everyone in the industry. OceanGate actually addressed the reason they are not classified in a post on their website. They said this is because this classification mainly focuses on mechanical issues and not operational ones. They say most marine accidents are a result of operator errors, not mechanical ones, so there's no need to get a classification. But I think we all know there probably is a reason why they didn't get classified. In a BBC interview, Rob McCallum talks about how the Titan sub was the only submersible in the world doing commercial work while unclassified. The reason he believes they weren't classified is because no one would sign off on the carbon fiber material they were using.
This is the only submersible in the world that's doing commercial work that was unclassed. That is to say, it's not certified by an independent agency. The reason it wasn't classed or certified is because no class society, no certifying agency is going to sign off on carbon fiber as a building product for a submersible.
It's difficult to find even a single person who says something positive about the Titan submersible. Even the past dives they did with the sub didn't always go smoothly. The sub was known to lose communication with the surface crew on several occasions, and there were multiple times where they needed to cancel trips because of the issues that came up. There's even this video that shows one particular trip where the crew actually got stuck for a bit because one of the thrusters was installed backward.
I don't know what's going on. I feel like...
Like what? Like the thrusters?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Is something going on with my thrusters? I'm thrusting and nothing's happening.
Me too, man. Me too.
Am I spinning?
Oh, wait, never mind. I take that back. They had to struggle for a while until they figured out how to reorient the controller to start moving again. As far as how the sub was able to last this long has also been discussed. A physics professor at Northeastern University named Aaron Bansil says the implosion was a result of the material used to make the sub. Most submersibles use steel, titanium, and aluminum. The Titan's hull used mostly carbon fibers, which were used because they were lighter than titanium or steel. He goes on to say that the properties of carbon fibers for deep-sea applications are not well understood yet. It can just crack and break suddenly. It would appear that the sub had been exposed to so much water pressure so many times that eventually the material just gave out. It's genuinely infuriating that this whole incident could have been prevented if it weren't for Stockton Rush's complete negligence for safety protocols in the name of innovation. But one thing that I will say is that Rush must have genuinely believed in what he was doing. He wouldn't have been on that sub with those passengers if he didn't.
Exactly.
He let his ego blind him, and as a result, he went down with his own creation. And worse yet, he brought 4 other people down with him. He said in an earlier interview that he wanted to be remembered, and he will. Just not in the way that he had imagined. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the flip side.
There you have it, guys. Subscribe to...
YouTuber Gotham Chess, known for his chess content, has recently found himself in a strange predicament. His last few videos have taken place in a strangely unfamiliar location. Instead of his home that we're used to, we now see a crude background concealing his whereabouts. His fans have become concerned about his well-being, pleading him to give us a sign if he's being held hostage. As you can see from the following clips, Gotham Chess has been subtly giving us cries for help from his captor.
I am in a prison-style setup. I'm in a prison somewhere and somebody is, forcing me to record videos.
In his most recent video, we see what appears to be his captor menacingly staring at him, making sure he no longer calls out for help. This is the Gotham chess hostage analysis. No, I'm just kidding. I just made a shitpost comment on one of his videos and I wanted to follow up. Have a good one, guys.
There's the guy himself. Awesome. Yeah, please come subscribe to Scared Theater. Seriously, awesome video. As I said, I'm just playing devil's advocate because of that video. That's coming from someone that's done these things. And the people that did it went down there, other than the 19-year-old, obviously, believed in what this guy was doing as well. And saying that it's groundbreaking, and they did it so many times. So they trusted in him. And if something goes wrong, something goes wrong, you know? It happens all the time. Especially when it's only been around for, what? They said it was under development for like 8 years only. That's still a very, you know, short amount of time that it's been around. So, anyways, I'm just saying, I'm playing devil's advocate, and yeah, I also believe that these people won't say should be celebrated, because you know everyone says that these people are just nuts and should have never done it. But I mean, I'm sure there's always going to be people willing to do things like this. So, yeah, just no one deserves to die, and that's what I believe. Yeah. So, oh, I got the shivers now. You guys must please have, you know, be safe. And yeah, remember, life is precious. So, yeah, again, go and subscribe to Scared Theater. Great video. And a lot of what he said is facts. The only thing is, a lot of it came from 2018. Very old. Have they done improvements to the submarine since then? I don't know. But yeah, have a good one. I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers and goodbye.